My name is Darius Jenkins, and I'm going to be covering Period 6, also known as the Gilded Age, because of the masses amount of increase in culture and intellectual thinkers. Some important things to know during this time that really kind of break down what the Gilded Age was is big business, big cities, and big changes. Big businesses led to an increase of urbanization as well as immigration, while big cities grew because of the job opportunities, which led to like a massive amount of corruption, like by political machines, and big changes during the Gilded Age. Many things changed. For example, the women's rights movement was just starting to gain its leverage during this time. The temperance movement, and even how our currency should be backed, begin to change. Big changes. Many companies started to rise to multinational status. Some of these icons would be J.D. Rockefeller owning Standard Oil. He made like billions of dollars. Andrew Carnegie, he owned U.S. Steel. He owned like hundreds of millions of dollars. While J.P. Morgan owned General Electric, although he owned multiple other companies, and it ended up, I believe, partnering with Andrew Carnegie, and he made just massive amounts of wealth. These guys made tons of money, even up to today's standards. Most of the mega rich people believed in social Darwinism, which is the belief that the mega rich are rich for a reason, and like natural selection, and kind of they are chosen to be rich. Covering more on big businesses, with the increased gap between the rich and poor, unions broke out and strikes began to escalate to violence, like the Haymarket Affair, Homestead Strike, and the Great Railroad Strike. Important unions know are Knights of Labor, led by Terence V. Powderly, National Union Labor, led by William H. Sylvis, and then the American Feds of Labor, led by Samuel Gompers, and then the Industrial Workers of the World, led by multiple people, and the Congress for Industrial Organization, led by John L. Lewis. One of the least corrupt rich people was kind of Andrew Carnegie, who wrote the Gospels of Wealth, saying how the rich should give back to the community, which is something he did by donating money to libraries, schools, and museums. During the Gilded Age, the shift from agricultural to urbanization greatly increased, with new cities and jobs openings in the north. By the 1890s, the largest cities in America were Boston, New York City, Chicago, and Philadelphia. Immigrants moved to the cities because of cheap housing. However, this also opened the door to political corruption. For example, William Tweed and the Tammany Hall. Corruption wasn't the only thing sparking up. Women's rights was also sparking up. They began to start up. This would lead America into temperance. In 1882, America passed the Chinese Exclusion Act, which restricted Chinese immigrants. As for the Chinese already in America, they were treated harshly and subjected to racism through physical treatment or political cartoons. The Chinese weren't the only ones who were treated harshly. Native Americans were taken off their lands and forced to go somewhere else or assimilate into American culture. The Dawes Act of 1887 is what made Indians assimilate. The natives tried their best to fight back, whether it be ghost dancing or war. To name a few wars, like the Battle of Little Bighorn, which ended in 268 dead and 55 injured Americans. Meanwhile, in the South, in 1877, the Reconstruction era had just ended. However, the South hadn't stopped their racism towards African Americans, only finding new ways to do so. For instance, Jim Crow laws were a series of laws intended to segregate African Americans in any way possible, whether it be voting or just eating in a restaurant or going to a school. In the Plessy versus Ferguson case, only encouraged this by declaring segregation constitutional. Also, hate groups like the KKK came about. Now to cover big changes, some important things to know is that for the first time, really, the Gilded Age marked the rapid growth of corruption. For example, the people who had power were the rich and mainly politicians. Examples of this would be William Tweed and Tammany Hall. Well, William Tweed was the New York mayor and promised to build a new city hall in 7 years. And promised to build a new city hall. In 7 years, he had spent $8 million and didn't build the city hall. He also promised to build it in 2 years for only $2 million. The city hall wasn't complete even after 15 years. U.S. Grant's cabinet is another example of corruption. Now, Grant wasn't corrupt, but his cabinet was very corrupt, and the people around him just were corrupt. For example, the whiskey ring scandal was a defraud of government taxes to keep liquor taxes. For his cabinet, or the Congress, would just basically keep the liquor taxes that came in and give themselves a bunch huge raise. Political machines were another example of corruption. A political machine was a politician's ace in the hole for winning an election. What these politicians did was give poor people, mainly immigrants, a job and a place to stay, and all they had to do was vote for the politician. Now, these places weren't that they stayed weren't the nicest living conditions by any means, but they weren't too far off of the living conditions of that time. Tenements. A tenement apartment was located in urban areas, generally poor areas. These apartments usually had no bathroom and lacked plumbing, so you couldn't use the restroom, you couldn't take a shower, you couldn't take a bath, you had no running water. These were truly some nasty, grimy places to be in. Many reformers began to notice these harsh living conditions and countered them with social sentiments like Jane Addams and Ellen Gates Stirr's Whole House, which gave many immigrants education, art programs, and significantly better living conditions, which is a really good thing. One kind of major thing that happened during the Gilded Age is the free silver versus standard gold. Free silver was proposed by William Jennings Bryan, and what free silver does is back all the U.S. currency with silver, which would benefit the farmers, which William Jennings Bryan was trying to do. He was kind of a farmer guy. He was from the South, and he really wanted to back up the farmers and kind of help them out. And he was really good at public speaking. For example, his speech, the gold speech, was really good. Gold standard, however, was proposed by William McKinley, and the gold standard backs all U.S. currency with gold. Well, with this fight of corruption and the fight of what our currency should be backed up on, this led us to the Panic of 1893, which it was a depression, but it wasn't like the Great Depression. It wasn't as bad, but it was pretty bad. This led us basically, unemployment skyrocketed up. People couldn't find jobs. They couldn't find food to eat. It was kind of a glimpse of what the Great Depression was going to be like, just on a smaller scale. To finally conclude this era would be the election of 1896. This was the election for the current for a new president, and it was mainly, there was multiple people running, but kind of the head stars would be William Jennings Bryan and William McKinley. These two ran against each other, but it was ultimately William McKinley who won by popular vote. And that concludes the Gilded Age.
Drop it.